So thank you for joining us today. This is, I believe, our 6th virtual gardening class, and we have Sarah Ryan joining us today. She's the EPA director from Big Valley Rancheria, and she's going to be talking to us about the importance of pollinator plants, which is really good to learn these days because I know that this is a big issue, and I'm excited to learn a little bit more about that myself. And if this is your first virtual class, there's a little quick etiquette that we like everybody to stay muted while the presentation is occurring. Just it helps limit any kind of background noise, and that echo that you hear can be a little disruptive. And then if you have a question, please feel comfortable to unmute yourself. Sarah likes to get questions through the presentation. So if you have something, you don't want to forget what it is, feel free to go ahead and ask it. You can also, there should be a little hand icon on your phone if you're joining from your phone or your tablet. You can raise your hand and I will see that and I can ask you to unmute yourself. And if you don't feel comfortable asking your question right away, you are more than welcome to post it into the chat box and we can address it after the presentation. And if you have any friends or family that you are wanting to join this class with you, I did post the phone number to call in and the meeting ID in the chat box, as well as the link. So you can just copy that and text it to your friend or family member if you're wanting them to hop on the call as well. So without further ado, I'll let Sarah take over the mic, and I think she can hear me now because I see a smile. So I'll stop sharing my screen and I will hand it over to you. Thank you, Sarah. And we'll just give her a second to pull up her presentation. See, we've got Nancy on here. Millie's joined us. Hi, Millie. And Darlene. Hi, everyone.
Hi. I still can't hear Sarah, though. It looks like she's muted.
Can you hear me?
No, now we can.
Now we can.
Yay.
Yay.
Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Yay, okay, great. So thank you, Sarah, for inviting me to come speak on the importance of pollinator plants. And I'm really excited to have this chance to discuss this with everybody who's on the call. I think I know most of you from all the work that you do with the garden and all the accessory work that you do over at the Lake County Tribal Health Consortium. It's important work, and I miss the in-person classes, but I think these virtual classes are a good idea as well. So so thanks for inviting me. And if you do have questions throughout this presentation, I have about 12 slides or so, 14 slides, sorry. And you can ask me questions throughout. So, and I've had to do a little bit of research to do this too, because I think we all know something about pollination and pollinator plants and the bees in decline and things like that. But I thought it was good to put it all together in a presentation, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on with protecting pollinators. So this is hopefully it'll be helpful for you all. Okay, I'm going to move to the next slide. So first, I just wanted to start off by saying, just as probably most of you have heard, pollinator animals are in decline. So this is why we want to encourage pollinator plants. And this picture that's on the left shows a bee with a flower, and it has these arrows toward it saying, you know, here's some of the problems that are happening. So on the top, it says limited floral resources. So there's actually a loss in feeding and nesting habitats. There's a lot of course, there's a lot of plants growing, right? But not all of them are plants that pollinators need nectar. So there's a decline in in flowering plants and flowers, basically. There's also parasites and pathogens that are affecting bees and other pollinating insects and pollinators. So that's reducing their numbers. And then the stuff on the left-hand side, the neonicotinoids, the fungicides, and the pyrethroids, these are all types of pesticides that have been shown to actually harm insects. And some of them are created to kill insects, but you know, when you're using an insecticide, which is a type of pesticide, you want to make sure that the insects around you that are beneficial, you know, that are the pollinators, that they're not being sprayed and killed by insecticides. Some of these pyrethroids, that's what they use for mosquito abatement. So when they're doing the fogging of, when they're dropping the pellets around the lake to kill the mosquito larvae, those are pyrethroids, and those things end up in the waterways, and insects and beneficial insects like bees are affected by them. Fungicides, I'm not sure how those are affecting the pollinators, but it's on the list. Neonicotinoids are a type of pesticide which is used for insect control, but again, it's harming pollinator animals. So if you move to the left part of the slide, so there's a loss in feeding and nesting habitats. There's pollution that's impacting the pollinator animals. There's disease and climate change. So when you have plants that are now pollinating at later times of the year, you've got insects that have to already move to cooler areas because it's too hot in that area now. There's starting to be this mismatch of timing, the syncing of things which used to be there isn't happening so much anymore. So these are the reasons why we want to encourage pollinator plants, and that's what my discussion is about today. It's all, it's the things that we can do to support the pollinator animals that we need so that we have our food sources. So the next slide, so the overview of my talk is I'm going to talk about what is pollination, and then what plants attract pollinators, and what animals are pollinators. So just to get into the science of it, but it's really actually simple. What is pollination? So flowers create sugar when during photosynthesis. Probably remember that from third grade science or something, that it's basically when they take the sunlight and they produce sugars for the plant to keep growing. Well, those sugars are what keeps the plant growing, but it's also what draws the pollinators. So the sugars or the nectars. And when you think of flowers and all the bees and butterflies and everything flying to them, it's because there's nectar in there that they need. So it's just this byproduct of the plant growing. They're growing. It's using the sunlight to grow, but it's got these sugars that get produced. So the nectar draws animals and insects into the flower, right? It's colorful and it's got this, I don't know, sweet smell. I mean, it has a good smell, but to animals, it's probably a good smell too. And they know that there's sugar, so they know that there's food. So they get drawn into it. That's why you see bees just sitting on the tops of flowers and other animals like burrowing right into it. So when they're burrowing into it to get that nectar, that sugar water, that sugar that has, that is just like coming out of the plant because of that photosynthesis that it's doing. The animals brush against parts of the flower, the male parts of the flower, which have the pollen, and then it jostles into and transfers the pollen into the female parts of the flower. And they might go from flower to flower to flower, and the pollen of, you know, the same flowers can reproduce. So you're not going to have a, I don't know, like a sunflower pollen reproducing with a, I don't know, like a California poppy, you know, the pollen. So that's why it's good to plant, when you're planting stuff, plant a bunch of it. So the pollen, when the insects are in there jostling around, you know, eating the nectar, drinking the nectar, they're moving the pollen from like flower, you know, similar flowers. So that pollen from the male part of the flower goes into the female part of the flower. of that same one flower or the group of flowers that you got there. And then that pollination, and I've got a picture on the very next slide, that pollination fertilizes a flower and it creates the fruit, which contains the seed, which starts the new plants. So it's this really nice cycle, perfect cycle. So insects and other animals help move the pollen from flower to flower when they visit the flower for nectar and pollen. So it's pollination can also occur outside of insects and animals moving it, like through wind and rain, but and even just kind of, the wind kind of jostling the plants up against each other. But 75% of all flowering plants need pollinators. So that's what pollination is in kind of the scientific terms. Here's a picture of it. So on the left-hand side is, pretty much every flower, if you were to, cut it open with a knife, X-Acto blade or whatever. I used to do this when I was a kid because I was just like, what's in a flower? So looking at the flower, the male parts are the stamen and the anthers. And if you look into any flower, you can see that's real jiggly. So that pollen sits on top of like this jiggly head, like a bobby head or something like that. And it can jostle around. And that goes, so that's the pollen, that's the male part. And then when a bee goes in there, so you see that the center picture of a bee with pollen on its legs there. What happens is the pollen sticks to the animals going in there, and then they go up into, if they brush past that stigma, and you can see it's a stigma in the center of it. It's the tallest part of the flower. That's where then the pollen goes down into there, and then you can see actually the female. So that's the female part, the stigma, and then the ovary, which has the eggs. So with the insects in there brushing around, it moves the pollen into the female part, the stigma, and then if you look to the right-hand picture, on the right-hand side of the right-hand picture, so you've got pollination happening, and then that ovary and stigma ends up turning into the fruit and the seeds of the plant. And so those seeds fall and then they resprout another plant. So that's pollination, is when all of that is going on. And if it's done by wind or rain, then it just means that the pollen is moving by itself, or, not from an insect or an animal, but from from being jostled in another way. So pollination is basically the way that plants reproduce themselves, and most plants do need that. And the cool thing is the insects and the animals are also eating from it. So it's a symbiotic relationship where the animals need the plants and the plants need the animals. So, but we all know that. That's why we take care of things. So what plants attract pollinators? This is like the next thing on my list. What plants attract pollinators? So there's a whole lot of plants growing. You can go to, Walmart or any nursery and get any sort of plant and plant it in your yard, and that's fine. That's fine. If that's what you're doing, that's okay. That's good. But if you can get some native plants, which are basically the plants that have been adjusted to live in this area, that's even better, because native plants attract native pollinators. Native plants have been here for a very, very long time, and they have their own species of things that like to visit it, to get the nectar from it and to pollinate it so that those native plants continue. It's important to also do a variety of species, a variety of plants, flowering shrubs, flowering trees, flowers. So because they can provide, they all kind of grow at different times of the year. You have some that come out just first in the spring, and then you've got things that more flower more in the summer. Like right now, I've got a garden with a bunch of tomatoes, and what else do I have in there? I've got peppers, tomatoes, squash, and kale, eggplant. So all of these things have flowers. Well, the kale doesn't have flowers. It will eventually have flowers if you let it go long enough. But anyway, they all have flowers. I'm seeing bees and other things buzzing around, and they're just they're basically the tomatoes are I have tomatoes on there now, but everything flowers at different rates. So just plant a variety of species, a variety of plants, so that they can provide pollen and nectar year round. This picture on this slide is a pollinator garden, which has flowers and flowering plants in there. And it's it's, you know, as you can see, it's, you can just create a little spot in your yard that has different plants that attract bees and attract the hummingbirds and those types of things. So flowers, think flowers and flowering plants. So some examples of native pollinator plants, we've got manzanita on the left, we've got redbud on the right, and those flower at different times. Like right now, you're not gonna see the beautiful redbud. It's now got the seed pods on it and everything. The manzanita flowers come out earlier, and of course you end up seeing the manzanita berries on them after those flowers are gone. So those are native pollinator plants, and they encourage native pollinator animals and insects to, you know, to interact with them because they're used to it. And we need more of them. We need a lot more manzanita, which are getting removed by agriculture going in, and they just see it as sort of brush, shrub. Who cares? Get rid of it. Put in vineyards. We need that manzanita. We need that redbud. Other native pollinator plants. That is a milkweed on the left, and on the right are lupin and poppies. You always see, you know, often see those growing together on the hillsides. So just other native pollinator plants. They're also, they are used to the weather here in California, or they're used to this region. They're used to it being really dry from about April to November. So native plants, as you all know, are best because they can handle the weather. They can handle the dry season that we have. They can handle the really wet season that we have in between. So those are some examples of native pollinator plants. These are the plants that are drawing native pollinators, those insects, those animals to them. So what animals are pollinators? So there are insects, and then there are species that are vertebrate animals. That means they've got backbones. So there's insects, so there's more than 200,000 species of insects that are pollinators. Flies, beetles, wasps, ants, butterflies, moths, and bees. And of course, there's all different kinds of each one of those. We don't always like all of those insects, but they do pollinate. And then the species that are vertebrate animals, birds, bats, and small mammals. This includes hummingbirds, type of bird, small mammals like possums even do a certain amount of pollinating, bats. These are the animals that are the pollinators. So these are the animals that are in decline because of the loss of feeding areas and habitat, pollution, disease, climate change. So pollinators require nectar as their primary food source. So remember, that's, you know, there's nectar in the plant, in flowering plants because of photosynthesis. I guess there's nectar in non-flowering plants, maybe, because that does photosynthesis too. I don't know, but flowers for sure. Anything that flowers has nectar in the flowers because of just, it's a sugar byproduct that gets produced as it's growing because of photosynthesis. So these are the animals we want to encourage to stick around because these are the animals that pollinate our food. So some examples of native pollinators, there's some digger bees, sweat bees. There's 1,600 species of native bees in California, and they don't all look like, you know, like the honeybee that you think of when you think of bees. They can look like they're little flying insects. Some of them are tiny little flying insects that we can just be like, what are these things? Get rid of them. But they are pollinating our plants, and they need nectar to survive. And a lot of them are in decline, like a lot of native plants and native species. So those are some examples of native pollinators. Here's some examples of other pollinators. So there are native hummingbirds, but you know, there's non-native hummingbirds around. That picture of the bee, that's actually a European honeybee. So the bee, when we think of honeybees, most of the ones around are Europeans. So they, you know, they're not an invasive species, but it'd be nice to, it's good to encourage the native bees and the native species. And I have a slide in this presentation that has some reference materials, links, computer links to look into native pollinators more and other things that we're talking about today. So lizards, butterflies, bees, hummingbirds, those are all types of pollinators. And, you know, we want to encourage pollinators, as I've been mentioning. So we want to provide food. And that is, we talked about a little bit, put in flowers, put in flowering plants, add those natural habitat areas or gardens in your yard, even if it's just a little bit. It's better than nothing. And it's so pretty. It's so pretty. I planted some lavender and some goldenrod in my yard a few years ago, and the amount of bees, honeybees, they're probably European honeybees, but it's really beautiful to watch and know that, you know, I'm helping participate in making the world a better place. So provide that food for pollinators, and plant native wildflowers, shrubs, and trees to provide shelter and food for a diversity of wildlife. You also want to provide water, especially during droughts. And that's why people have, you know, little fountains, little pools, little bird baths, things like that really help the insects, especially through the hot days. And you want to provide cover and places for them to raise their young. They're going to build nests. They're going to want to, you know, they need a place to have shade or whatever. So if you have a yard with a lot of things in it, you know, a lot of plants of different kinds, and even, I mean, gosh, the garden, I haven't seen the new garden at Tribal Health, but certainly the old garden at Tribal Health, both of them provided all sorts of little habitat for native pollinators and pollinators. There's, you know, just the plants alone provide that space. And then you want to reduce pesticide use, especially the neonicotinoids. And I'll go into that a little bit more, but those are pesticides that definitely impact, have been known to impact, and actually people are trying to get it banned, you know, that they shouldn't be allowed anymore because it's so severe how they impact the pollinators. So in reducing the pesticide use, yeah, I guess I'm almost done. Reducing the pesticide use, what I mean by that is learn what types of insects are being a pest in your area. So pesticides are the chemicals that kill pests. And it can be an insecticide that kills insects. It can be an herbicide that kills green plants. It can be a fungicide that kills funguses, bactericide kills bacteria, a whole bunch of them. So, but if you're trying to get rid of the insects because you don't want, you know, you don't want insects in your house, you just pay attention to the types of insects you have around, because some of those insects and that picture on this slide, those are all beneficial insects. So you want to encourage the beneficial insects because they eat other pests. You probably all heard about ladybugs. They'll eat aphids. You've got a type of wasp there that is eating a caterpillar, which that particular caterpillar must be something that attacks, you know, crops. Spiders will eat insects, you know, they catch flies and other things. And the beneficial insects, which actually are doing the pesticide work for you. They're eating the other pests. And if you do have to use pesticide and insecticide to kill insects, to try to avoid killing that native pollinator. Sometimes people will have bee infestation, and if it's actually a honeybee infestation, you don't want to just spray the heck out of it to kill everything. There are honeybee bee cultivators in the county and all over who will often do it for free to capture the queen, and they'll take your hive. They'll go into your, you know, open up that part of your house where your honeybee hive is, and take the hive and take the queen, and get all the bees out of there. So just, you know, learning, take a picture of your insects and send it off to, you know, send it to me. I'll look it up. Go to the Ag Extension in Lakeport where the Fast Food restaurants are, Hamburger Hill. The ag extension is right there, the ag office, and you can show them a picture of the insect. What kind of insect do I have here? Look it up online, put it in Google image and upload it. Instead of just kind of killing everything in the area, see if you can protect the native pollinators and change what's happening in your area to limit the amount of pests that are building up there. And just remember that when you use insecticides, they will get absorbed into the plants and they can be present in the pollen and the nectar. So you don't want to, that's another reason why you really want to reduce your pesticide use, because whatever you're spraying could be impacting the beneficial insects, the pollinators, for a long time. Could be poisoning them. So keep that in mind and use the things that say that they're not toxic to bees, not toxic to pollinator insects, and the labels will often tell you that. On this last slide, I have a, just some references. Here's some of the information that I used to put this presentation together that I think has some good information that will be helpful for you all. There's actually even a couple of groups that you could join, the millionpollinatorgardens.org, and if you put in a pollinator garden, you can list your place on there. So it's cool to see. I've got on the map, and there's a lot of places. There's actually there's 3 or 4 pollinator gardens in Lake County, and so we can do better than that. Most of us probably have pollinator gardens. So, join these groups and look into the things that, information that will help you improve your, being able to put in a pollinator garden, pollinator plants, and protect the pollinators that are out there. I'll give them food, give them water, build that diversity in your yard, or be a part of a garden that's happening elsewhere, like what's happening at Lake County Tribal Health. And of course, know the area. I mean, native plants are a great way to go because they can already thrive in this climate. They can thrive with the summers and the long time with no rain. So I also think this is really good information and curriculum for kids. I think that, if with your kids, especially with, schools being closed down or you have to do distance learning, you can, even on these references, you can find some good curriculum for kids so that kids can learn more about the insects and pollinator gardens. And, even this time of year, you can put in pollinator plants that will grow over the fall and winter, or get ready for having it for the spring. So thank you. I guess it's the end of my presentation, and if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them, or any ideas that you have. I'd even like to hear like what you're doing in your own yard, since we don't have a whole lot of people on the phone, and happy to even love to hear how you're doing it. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Does anybody have a question? I don't see any in the chat box, but if you have any questions or wanted to tell us what you're doing in your yard, feel free to unmute yourselves.
Sarah?
Yes.
This is Millie, but well, 2 Sarahs. Yeah, no, I just kind of have, this was a lot of information. I don't like caterpillars, so I always kill them. I'm scared of them. So I have nothing to do. Those I will not save. I don't care. I don't care how far away it is. I will throw rocks at it. I don't know what it is, but but that was really interesting, all that stuff there. But I do have water bath, for a bird bath though, set around. And I just bought some kind of pollinator plant thing from Star Garden here in Middletown. It's pretty blue. It attracts bees, they said. I can't think of the name of it now, but and what is that? The flower with the butterfly sitting on next to the lupus and poppies?
That is milkweed.
That's what milkweed looks like.
Yeah.
That is a native plant.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad to hear that you recently bought some plants that say that they're good for bees and are and pollination, and that's exactly how to do it, is to when you're going over to a nursery or even at a store, they often have little stickers or information on them. But if you see flowers on it, it's going to be a pollinator plant. So
Yeah,
plant
I
those
see
flowers.
that now. Yeah, and then I have petunias.
Oh,
I see different kind of. I see even a bumblebee hovers over it.
oh, that's great.
Yeah, I see
Ah.
that, and I do have. I didn't know lizards were helpful, but I got 5 or 6. They kind of like my friend. They think they know me because they, kind of walk beside me. If I'm walking to the car, they'll run alongside me, but they're not my friends. I'm not crazy for lizards, but
Well,
anyway, I
who
know
knew? Who knew that they also pollinated? I did not know that until today, but
yeah, I didn't know
they
that, but
actually play a really important role in keeping a healthy land.
but I see that, and then we have our tribes garden over here, and I see a lot of bees there and moths, little
Mhm.
white moths, and the butterflies. I'm learning the butterflies from the 93-year-old lady I work for because she knows the name of them right off the bat.
Wow.
And they called a lot of pipe vine. Oh, I can't even something. But the black, because I told her there's a black butterfly, and she said, "Oh, that's strange because that comes from a different country." But she said they're the best pollinators. She said, and I
Oh,
didn't have to get all that information, but it's called pipe vine something. But then the little yellow and light yellow and white, they're just called pipe vine. She said, but the other black one, she said they're unique, and they
wow.
are the best pollinators. And the monarch, she has that. But I was really amazed with all this stuff, what you talked about today. That was a good presentation, Sarah. Very good. I
Thanks.
enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Millie. And I think one of the interesting things about this topic is how well everything works together if we allow it to. So you've got a yard that has different kinds of flowers, and it's got lizards, and it's got butterflies, and it's got moths, and it's got different kinds of moths, and that you're doing it right. It shows that you're doing it right, and that's the take-home message, is just keep doing what you're doing with it, because you've got a variety of animals and a variety of plants, and that's what is needed. And so you would think that we all have a certain amount, but it's not enough, actually. I mean, this is why it's important to spread the message. Like, look how easy it is to do this, because the diseases are really affecting the honeybees, and pollution and climate change is also really cutting their numbers down. So the people who study these insects are saying we're in trouble unless we really get those numbers up. So I think just encourage everyone, and build up your own amount of pollinators in your yard, and you'll be helping, really
Yeah,
helping. So,
I didn't know that what little I do have here, because I have hummingbirds, and at evening time there's 3 or 4 bats flying around. So I didn't know that, this was all good here, but I do have ladybugs too, because I see them.
oh,
But
wow.
the what you call them, the hummingbirds are always around. I don't think it's the same hummingbird. I'm not too sure, but yeah, and a lot of dragonflies. I have tons of them.
Oh, that's great. Dragonflies. I'm pretty sure dragonflies are pollinators too.
They
Actually, it's
have
my
to be because
favorite
they land
insect.
on the flower. Yeah, they do
Yeah,
land there, but they don't stay too long. So after you're saying that, they must be a pollinator too. But
yeah.
I have 5 or 6 of them. They're flying around all the time.
Uh, I
Yeah.
thought of a great project for kids, and um, uh, over at Big Valley a couple years ago, we were starting it, and then something happened. We had to stop for the time being. So I hope we pick it back up. And it's just basically making a poster of what are the birds of Big Valley. What are the insects of Big Valley?
Yeah.
Now we
Mhm.
can even say, what are the native pollinators of Big Valley? And I think that if you've got kids, we actually even wrote a grant, didn't get funded, but it's like, let's get the kids to videotape it. Let's get the kids to take pictures of, and let's do this cool poster. And, you know, I still think that it can be done, should be done. And it's, especially right now with schools being how they are, it might be a, you know, semester long project.
Yeah, it should be. You know, because I did see, I can't remember where I seen it, where a little girl was taking a picture of, I guess when a caterpillar or turns in the sack, the cocoon.
Oh,
And
yes.
every day she videotaped, well, you know, not, I don't know how, but it finally when it came to a butterfly, and that was a science project for, I can't remember what movie I watched that on, but that is interesting. I am going to tell Marty, our equal lady, you know her, to start that a little event with the children, you know, online where they can, because they all have that phone, they can go out and see what's happening with the animals out here.
There are even some apps like iNaturalist and other apps, and I'll send some stuff to Sarah because I'll have to look it up, but there are some apps that people can download on their phones where you can either log in or you can basically say, hey, I saw, you know, take a picture of it. I saw this here, and it becomes part of this larger mapping of insects and birds and plants. They have these apps for logging and documenting all types of, you know, of situations. So that might be something that would resonate with the kids too, is doing it through an app. But yeah, I think there's a lot that can be done just with kids with this, but also with adults. I mean, we love it when when our yard looks good and we're seeing the flowers, so it's, this just encourages it more. Thanks, Millie, for hearing about your experience. I'm really excited to hear that.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I like the talk. It was very, very nice. I wish the children would be able to listen on to this. You know, every Native American, I mean, that was nice with the 6 tribes. That should be brought to their attention just for their little learnings. I like that. That was really, really good.
And I know Angie's on the call, our new youth lifestyle coach too, so I'm sure she's probably taking notes on her end right now and getting ideas to do with the kids. So I'm sure her wheels are spinning over there. I'm amazed at how many pollinators you have, Millie. You
I didn't even know that. Yeah, I didn't even know they were. Well, I knew the hummingbirds were something. I know the bees were something. I didn't know about the bumblebees though, because there is one black bee that just hangs around there. I don't know if he's good or bad, but he's a very, very big. I should take a picture of it and send it to you. Yeah, he's a very big, pretty black, shiny bumblebee.
Mm-hmm.
What about them? Are there no pollinators?
Do they have any yellow on them, or are they all black?
I think he does have a little tinge of yellow, just a little touch. Yeah.
I'd love to see a picture.
Yeah, now I won't see it for a while now that I'm talking about it and want to picture it. But every time I get in the evening, he's there by the petunias only.
Oh, wow.
And he looks really pretty because it's purple petunias and then he's there.
Wow.
Yeah, send us
I will take a picture. I will take a picture.
We'll figure out what it is.
Yeah, okay. Alrighty, I'm done talking.
Thank you, Millie.
Thanks, Millie.
Anybody else? I did see there's a question in the chat box from Diane. She said that they knocked down wasp nests on their house. Any way to keep them away from the house without harming them? Are they pollinators also?
Wasps are pollinators also, but not every pollinator, you know, I mean, it's okay to encourage them to go somewhere else because we need to be able to survive where we are as well. The best thing is to knock them down before they really get big, because then you're going to make them not want to keep building there if you keep knocking it down when it's small. So I would say just create like a surveillance, you know, of the nests so that you can knock them down before they get big. And that's why, and so it will just basically, you won't have a big nest that ends up of wasps that die. But it's also the native pollinators. So if you plant native plants, it's going to occur and have a situation where it encourages them to be there. So there's water and there's shade, you know, you have diversity of plants. that'll bring the native pollinators. And the more native pollinators that we have, the fewer of either the invasive species, the insects that are out there that we'll have, because they'll be taking all the food. So with wasps, and I'm sure there's some native wasps, and there's also some probably non-native wasps that are out there. So the best bet is to knock any nests down of like yellow jackets and things before they get big, so that you don't lose too many of them and they just get encouraged to go elsewhere, and plant native plants that flower, so that you can encourage the native pollinators that will be able to outcompete with the wasps and the non-native pollinators. So yes, there's a lot of stuff that's pollinators that, I mean, there's those, okay, so Millie was talking about caterpillars. So there's a really ugly looking caterpillar called a tomato worm that, ooh, if you step on a tomato worm, that thing is big and green and juicy and ooh. And they'll eat your tomatoes. So it grows into a moth, you know, it goes into a cocoon, I forget what that's called. It grows into a moth, hibernates or something, grows into a moth, and that, you know, that will eat your garden. So it is pollinating, but there's some things that you want to encourage the beneficial insects. And I think I have a slide on beneficial insects a little bit. Maybe I don't. But the, oh yeah, I do. Wait a minute. Where is that? It's right. Oh, I keep moving the slide that you guys don't see. Okay, so the beneficial insects, and that is a term, like you can Google that. You can look that up. What are beneficial insects in California? Ladybugs are one of them, because they will eat the species that are eating your plants. So the more beneficial insects that you have around, they will keep the numbers down of the stuff that you don't want to keep around. So that would be my recommendation, is to knock the nests off early and plant native plants that will, and encourage beneficial insects. And depending on which area of the county you live, or which area of the, you know, where you are, you could be in a really shady, or you could be in a really a cooler area or a drier area in this region, and the beneficial insects that could survive there might be different. So it's good to, like, if you want to know exactly and have it look up, I mean, feel free to contact me, and I'll help, you know, I'll figure it out, you know, through basically talking to Ag Extension, looking online, and seeing what information is out there about which beneficial insects will do well in your area. But that's the neat thing about this county. There's, you know, we've got some really wet areas and really dry areas, and so different things do well in different places. But that's what I would do, those items.
Thank you, Sarah. And then I have Darlene Franco. She raised her hand a little bit ago. I'm going to have her unmute herself. Or if she,
Hi.
There we go. Hi, Darlene.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Darlene Franco. I'm with Chummy Yokas from Visalia, near Fresno, so Central California. Thank you for this talk, and thank you for posting it on Facebook. I just happened to see it, so I'm glad I was able to get on. I'm currently the Director of Native Wellness for Fresno American Indian Health Project, but I wear a lot of hats. But I was the community garden coordinator there, and previously, so we have a garden in Fresno. But I also am, we started with Chumney Farms, which is basically our local tribe. We have access to some land, but on the land, it's Quaker Oaks Farms. On the land, we have a lot of pollinators. We have what we call pollinator hedgerows. And so a few years ago, during our spring camp, we had the kids start planting these, because we live, you know, it's dry. We've, you know, been through the drought and all that stuff. So we wanted to bring back more native plants and native pollinators. So it was really good. The information that you shared was really easy to understand and very concise. Because sometimes we do things on the farm that I don't really understand why we're doing them. It's just, you know, it's good to do. But, you know, there's this big word going around of agroecology. and I've been working on a project with agroecology. But I tell people, don't worry about the terminology. Agroecology really is just going back to the old ways. Same thing with permaculture. It's going back to the ways our people took care of the land, respected the land, and let the land take care of us. So I wanted to let you guys know. I tried to put it in the chat, but I couldn't. We're having an event, our Zoom call this Saturday and Sunday. The first day, it's only 2 hours from 10 to 12. We're going to be talking about all of our research that we did this year. We visited different places in Sonoma County and Santa Cruz area and our area, kind of looking at what people are doing, how they're growing food, how they are taking care of the land, just different, not native, just all, different kinds of people. And then the second day, we're going to be talking about how we can be more food resilient for our people. With the pandemic going on, people are realizing our food system is not that great. People are fighting over food and toilet paper and, all these things. For our Native people, it's been different because, we're used to being survivors and we're used to being resilient. We're used to being resourceful. So what we started this spring, like I said, is the Wachumni Farms, because we wanted to make sure that our kids knew how to grow food that they could eat. So it's not as successful as I would have liked this farm to be or this garden to be, because we did a lot of things not correct. For one thing, we started late. But the most important thing is that we got the kids out there. They were learning how to take care of the soil, how to plant things, and how to harvest them and water them and all that sort of thing. So we're a little bit behind on the game, but the important thing is that people were out there doing it. And so let me see. I don't know how I can get this information to you. I don't know if I can screen share. Maybe you can take it off of there.
Darlene, if you want to put your email into the chat box, we can connect through there, and we can forward it to others that joined the call today that may want to join in on that meeting.
Okay, that would be great. Yeah, because your input is welcome, and just to see what we're doing. But I just wanted to invite everybody, and thank you for this information. It's a really good presentation.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing the link for that, because if you're doing going to be going over the research and the successes of you guys' program this year, and you're doing it this weekend, I definitely want to jump in and watch. I'm looking forward to it. I think we all learn from each other, and as you said, it actually is just going back to the ways that people knew how to take care of themselves, and it's just connecting back up with that. And I think that it's extremely important. Many people have gotten away from it just because of the way society is now, but it's obviously food sovereignty is incredibly it's incredibly important. So I'm excited to hear what you guys have been working on, and thanks. I look forward to seeing the link on that. I want to attend.
Alrighty.
Thank you. And Nancy Rhodes, she said, really appreciate the local native plants for our area to plant. She said thank you in the chat box. Does anybody else have any questions or anything to share? Okay,
no, this is Millie again. That flower is called Blue Spring, Sarah. So that pollinator.
Oh, Blue Spring. Okay.
Yeah, it's really pretty. Yeah, it's really pretty, but that's what it's called, Blue Spring.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to look that up.
Thank you. Yeah, Sarah, I'll kind of be interested in Darlene's talk, I guess, when she said it'd be tomorrow, I guess. So that's when it is, Saturday. But yes, your topic was very, very nice, Sarah. I like that.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
I can text you, Millie, the link once I get it from Darlene. If anybody else is interested in, just getting the recording of this or a link to our YouTube channel or the handouts to go with Sarah's talk today, just put your email into the chat box and I can forward that to you if I haven't gotten it in past classes. All right.
Sarah, I'll be emailing this PowerPoint over to you right after this.
Okay, so great. I can include that too. All right. Well, thank you. If nobody has any more questions or anything to add, I'd like to thank Sarah for giving us her time today and all the information. And it definitely motivated me to do more flowers in my garden next year, because now I feel like I didn't have enough. So it's very encouraging, and really appreciate you taking the time to join us today, Sarah.
Anytime.
Thank you so much,
you.
and thank you everybody else for joining us today too. Millie, Darlene. There's a Stress Less camper. Not sure who that is. Sonia, Virginia, Angie, Diane, Cece, Nancy Rhodes. Okay, got everybody. Thank you all for joining us, and hopefully
Stress Less Camping is Tony and Peggy Barthel.
Tony and Peggy. What is their last name?
Barthel.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your day and rest of your weekend, and stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, bye, Sarah.
Thank
Bye,
you.
folks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.